Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me today. Today we are going to talk about online church streaming platforms and the platforms that are my preferences for live streaming and all the ins and outs and pros and cons and all of that. Now this video is actually going to be part of a mini series of videos in which we're going to discuss live streaming in general, and we're going to go through a whole bunch of different things all relating to live stream. So if that sounds good, why don't you go ahead and give this video a thumbs up. And I would love it if you could subscribe to this channel. That would be really helpful. It really helps the channel if you can do that. And if there's anybody that you know who's struggling with live streaming, who you think this might be helpful for, then please go ahead and share this video with them. All of those things really help this channel, so that would be fantastic if you can do all of that. So before we dig into my recommendations about what platforms you should be using, I want to just talk a little bit about terminology, because I often have conversations with people where I think they get the terminology a little bit confused, and I think it's helpful just to get this right in our heads first of all, so that we can understand what exactly it is that we're talking about when we talk about platforms. So the first term I want you to try and understand when we're talking about live streaming is content. And content is the thing that you're going to be putting out. Now on this platform, we talk about church tech, and specifically in this video, I've really geared this towards online church. And so the content in most situations is probably going to be a church service, but it could be anything else. It could be like a testimony video, it could be worship stuff, it could be anything else really, a story, whatever it might be, Bible passage, something like that. But just for now, let's assume we're talking about a church service. And that is going to be our content. That is the thing that we're going to be putting out on the internet. If you like, we can call that our what. What is it that we're going to be putting out? That's our content. And at the other end, we have our where. Where are we going to be putting it out? And that is our platform. Where do people need to go to find this piece of information, to find our content? Where are they going to go to find it? That's our platform. And between the what and the where, we have this gap in the middle, and that is the how. How are we going to deliver our content to our platform? And that will be some kind of an encoder, software encoder, hardware encoder, something along those kind of lines. And over the course of this little mini series that we're going to do, I want to talk about the platform. That's what we're going to deal with today. But I'm also going to deal with the how, and I'm going to give you a few examples of how we can do that. But we're going to deal with those in another video. That isn't actually what we're going to address today. And hopefully you already know what your content is, because that's what you do on a Sunday morning or whatever else it is you're trying to put out. So you've got the what already. Today we're going to be talking about the where. And then in a future video, we're going to look at the how as well. So we're going to break all those things down. So we've got our content, we've got our encoding stuff in the middle, and then we've got our platform at the end. And that's the where, and that's the bit that we're going to look at today. Okay, so when we're talking platforms, there are a number of options available for us. There is what I would normally call the big three. There are three platforms that a lot of people will go to and a lot of people will use. One of them's a little bit of an oddball, but we'll deal with that one separately. The other two, you will find probably 90% of churches are going to be live streaming to one of these two platforms. So we've got either Facebook and YouTube. Those are the kind of big two kind of core places that people will be live streaming to. The third one that's a slightly oddball is Zoom. I call it a slight oddball because it's not quite a true live streaming platform. It's not somewhere that's completely public and completely open that anybody can just go and visit. It's more of a closed meeting. It just works slightly differently. It's not exactly the same as the others. But those are going to be the three places that most churches are going to choose to use. So it's either going to be Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom. But those are not the only options that are available. And there are some others as well that we can look at. And one in particular that I might strongly encourage you to take a look at, but we'll cross that bridge in a minute. Let's start off with our big three, and I'm just going to talk for a minute about the pros and cons of each of those three, and we'll just go through those just briefly for a moment. So first up, we've got Facebook. Facebook is one of the most common platforms for live streaming. In fact, just online content generally is massive on Facebook. So there's loads loads of options for putting stuff out on Facebook, and lots of churches use it and lots of churches really like it. The pros of Facebook are that so many people are on Facebook. Facebook is a very popular platform. Lots of people use it. And another very helpful question sometimes to ask, we spoke a minute ago about the what, the how and the where. But another question that we can quite often ask is the why. Why are we going to do a live stream? And if your reason for doing a live stream is because you want to connect with people and you want to perhaps use it as a form of evangelism, and you want to be able to share with people who otherwise wouldn't come into the building, well, Facebook is great for that, because there are loads of people on Facebook, people from the church, but people from outside of the church as well, people in your local community. You can bet your bottom dollar that there will be people living locally to you who are on Facebook, and there will be some kind of local Facebook group that you can get involved in as a church to connect with people locally. So Facebook is great for that kind of thing. It really does bring people together, and there are loads of people who use Facebook. So if you want to do live streaming because you want to connect with people, then Facebook could be a really good option for you. So what are the cons of Facebook then? What are the downsides? Well, although a lot of people are on Facebook, still not necessarily everybody is on Facebook. And in order to access Facebook and use Facebook, you do need to have an account with Facebook. And if you have people who don't have a Facebook account, and all you're doing is putting content out on Facebook, then you are saying to some people, you can't attend our church. There is a limit as to who can actually come to your church, who can actually attend church online with you guys, if you're only using Facebook. And so in one sense, if you only use Facebook to put your content out, then you're kind of making church into a members only club. You're saying you can only kind of join in with this if you have an account with Facebook. If your name's not on Facebook, you're not coming in. Another problem with Facebook is quality. I think personally the quality of Facebook is poor, really, really bad. They very heavily compress both audio and video. So when you're putting out live stream content on Facebook, they will just make it look awful. The compression on Facebook is really bad. The maximum resolution that you can stream on Facebook is only 720p, which, okay, that's fine. It's generally considered the lower end of normal at the minute, but it does still fall in that normal bracket that we might consider, but it's right at the bottom down there. So if you're looking for something that's going to do a good job of making your services look nice and look presentable, I would avoid Facebook, to be quite honest with you. It doesn't do a great job of that. And thirdly, usability. I think recently Facebook have made a number of negative changes to the usability. They've changed the website recently and changed things like their video uploader and a few other bits of Facebook, and I found it really not a good move. I think Facebook right now feels very much like it's geared towards people who are using their mobile phones. And let's face it, most of the traffic that goes on Facebook is done via mobile phones. And it really feels right now that Facebook are driving towards people just taking a video with their mobile phone, perhaps kids' first day of school, or the cat's just fallen off a table, or hey look, this is what I've got for my tea. Take that video on your mobile phone, click a button, post to Facebook, job done. And that seems to be like Facebook's primary focus right now. And all the changes that they've made recently have all been about mobile phones and how easy is this to do on a mobile phone. Now the downside of that is if you're trying to do something on any other device other than a mobile phone, actually it becomes a lot more complicated, because the whole layout of it is geared around a mobile phone, and if you're trying to do it off some other device, actually I don't think it works all that well. So that's Facebook. What about YouTube? So I'm a big fan of YouTube. Clearly, I have a YouTube channel, but I also think it has a number of positives. YouTube is actually the world's second biggest search engine, obviously the biggest one being Google. But then if anybody wants to find something and they're not going to use Google, the second place they would go is YouTube. People search on YouTube for things. If they've got a problem and they want to try and work out how do they solve this problem, YouTube is the second most likely place that people will go. So it's a very big, very popular place for people to be. You don't have to have an account to access it, so anybody can access content on YouTube. YouTube is very easy and very accessible for a lot of people. Quality-wise, I think the quality is a lot better. There is still compression that happens on the video and the audio for YouTube, but I think it's a lot better. And I think it looks a lot nicer than Facebook does. You can also stream in full 1080p as well, so it is a higher quality than what you get on Facebook. YouTube is also great because you can embed links into other places. So for example, if you want people to go to your website to find your content, you can take a link from YouTube and embed it into a website and people can go and pick it up from there. Likewise, you can share a YouTube link back onto Facebook. So if you want people to be able to find you on Facebook, you can just stream to YouTube and then copy the link into Facebook and people can access it that way. So there's quite a lot of flexibility as to how you can use YouTube. And I actually don't think there are that many downsides to using YouTube. It just seems to work in pretty much every situation for pretty much every person. If you know of any negatives for YouTube, chuck them in the comments below. I'd love to know what you think are the downsides of YouTube. But personally, I think it just works really well all the time in every situation. So I'm a big fan of YouTube and I think it's well worth considering as a platform to use. So finally, let's just have a quick talk about Zoom. Zoom is another place that people will choose to put their services and put their content out. As I say, it's not really technically a proper live stream. It's a video chat facility. People sort of treat it in the same way, but it isn't really the same thing. And that's fine. Don't get me wrong, there's nothing wrong with that. Zoom really works for a lot of people in certain circumstances. Obviously, the big advantage of Zoom is you get instant feedback. You get that way of being able to communicate with people and they can communicate back with you. It is a two-way conversation. Facebook and YouTube, those live streaming platforms, you're live streaming out to them. The only way that they can come back to you is with text in the text chat box. And quite often that's a bit delayed in coming back to you. So it's not that kind of instant two-way communication that you get from Zoom. Zoom is definitely much better for that. And if for you, the reason why you're doing live streaming is because you want to just communicate with members of your church who are just unable to get into the building, then Zoom could be a really good way. If you're not necessarily looking to expand and to grow the church by going online, then Zoom can work really well for that. It's very personal, it's very connective, and it's very responsive in that way. So that could be a really good option for you. And it can also have the benefit of being a bit more private if you want to be able to do personal prayer for people, for example. But I do think Zoom just works in that one specific context. So it is just for people who want to connect with people who are already part of your church. Okay, so that kind of covers the pros and cons of the big three platforms. But what about other platforms? There are some other platforms that you can use, and there are other platforms that might be worth considering. And the big one that I'm going to really recommend that you take a look at is the Church Online platform. Church Online was developed by Life Church in America. That's the church that created the YouVersion Bible app and have done loads of great work over in America and make a lot of resources freely available for churches. And Church Online platform is no different. It is a free resource for churches to go and access. In fact, they developed this platform for their own church so that they could do church online, and then have just extended it out to other churches as well and said, hey, if you're a church and you want to use this, here it is, go and sign up. And the great thing about Church Online platform is it's specifically designed for churches to do church on. And so if you're trying to do online church, it's got everything there that you already need as a church for doing church. So for example, if you want to be able to offer opportunities for prayer, you can create buttons in Church Online that people can just click, and you can just say, click this button here if you want prayer. People can click the button and there can be an automatic response. Likewise, if you want to do online giving, there's ways that you can do that. There are opportunities for people to make a commitment if they want to become a Christian. There are buttons that you can add for all sorts of things, and they are just built into that platform ready to go. So it really is a very well thought out church platform for doing online church. And so I would really strongly suggest that if that's where you're at and you want to do that, then have a look at the Church Online platform. The downsides are it's not hugely discoverable. Not many people know about it, particularly here in the UK. There's not many people who know about Church Online. So if you're trying to outreach to people, it might not be the best place to do that. But again, as with YouTube, you can put a link to this from your website. So you can say to people, head to our website. If you want to get in contact with us, all the information you need is there. And when they get to your website, they can find a link to your Church Online page, and that can just take them straight through to the Sunday morning service that way. So it can be quite nice to connect in that way. So Church Online is definitely worth a look. And there are a number of other online platforms that you could also consider. Two really big online platforms right now are TikTok and Twitch. These are two online streaming platforms. They're pretty much just dedicated just for doing live streaming too. But these two platforms have a fairly niche audience, and I don't think they really connect with church, generally speaking, but the one time that they might make sense is for youth and young people's work. And if you particularly want to connect with younger generations and younger people, it might be worth having a look at one of those platforms, because that's a very popular platform for young people to be using. Okay, so those are your platform options. As I say, loads of options, and there are others as well besides all of those. So it might be worth having a dig around, but probably one of those that I've just spoken about is going to be the platform for you. However, you might be thinking that actually, well, I quite liked some of what you said about Facebook, and I quite liked some of what you said about YouTube, and I quite liked some of what you said about Church Online platform, and actually would like to use bits of all of those things. And if that's you, then great. And absolutely, you can do that. And in fact, I probably would recommend that that is exactly what you do, because there are pros to all of those platforms. And the best thing you can do is to tap into all of the positives of all of those platforms. And if you can use all of that technology all to your advantage, you can create a very powerful online church platform, online church space. And it actually isn't that hard to do. So very quickly, just as we close this video up, I'm going to teach you two ways that you can maximize using multiple places online for online church. The first one is to use a paid service such as Restream. Now, the downside of using multiple online services is that you need to have the internet connection and computer processing power and all those kind of things to be able to maintain multiple streams simultaneously to all of those places. So for example, if you want to stream to Facebook and to YouTube and to Church Online all at the same time on a Sunday morning, well, those will be three independent streams that you need to be able to do from your church. That means you need 3 times the internet connection, 3 times the computer power, 3 times everything to be able to get those connections out to 3 different places. The beauty of Restream is that you only need to do 1 stream from your church to the Restream website, and then Restream will then manage the rest of the streams out to all the other platforms for you. And you can connect multiple platforms up from your Restream website, from your Restream account. You do 1 stream up to Restream, and then that will manage all the other streams out. The downside of Restream is it is a paid thing. You do need to pay to have that account, to be able to have access, to be able to do all of that. But if you're happy to pay that subscription and you're happy to pay for that resource, you can do it that way. The second way that this can be done is you can do it effectively via YouTube for free. Now, it's not quite the same. It is slightly different. Let me just explain. If you stream to YouTube, as I mentioned earlier on, YouTube embeds quite nicely into a number of other places, and you can stream up to YouTube, and then you can take that link and you can embed it into your website. It's also a very effective way to use Church Online, and I very often will do this. I will stream to YouTube, and then I'll take that link and I'll embed it into the Church Online platform, and you can access it from there. Equally, you can take that link and you can put it on Facebook and people can access it from there. So you can just do 1 stream from your church to YouTube, and then you can then connect that link to all the other places you want it to go from YouTube, and people can access you from all of those different places as well. So that can be another way to do it, and that doesn't cost you anything. There's no charges for doing that. That's a free way to do it. It's not quite the same as using Restream. You're not setting up an independent stream to each of those locations. You're just doing one stream to YouTube and then copying the link to everywhere else. But if you want to do it without having to pay the subscriptions to something like Restream or any other platform, it can be a nice way to do it for free and give you all the power of being able to access all of those other platforms. So that is our dive into platforms. Hopefully that's been helpful for you. If you've got any questions, then please do drop them below. And if you think I've missed anything out, and there might well be, because these platforms are changing all the time, there's lots of updates and upgrades and things that are happening, so there might be bits that have upgraded that I didn't know about. Please let me know in the comments. I would love to know that. I want to make sure I'm keeping up to date as much as anybody else. So it would be really helpful if you could drop those in the comments if there is anything that you are aware of. As always, if you found this video helpful, please give it a thumbs up and consider subscribing. That would be great. And as I say, this is going to be part of a little mini series on live streaming. So if you want to come back and check out the other videos, it will be great to see you in a couple of weeks' time for those as well. That's it for now. Take care, have a good week, and I'll see you again next week. Hey guys. Hey guys. Hey guys. Hey guys, thank you so much for joining me today. It's great to... It's apple juice, don't worry. New acoustic panels on here. Do you like it? If you know, you know. I've got this original pocket cinema camera and I've recently been playing around with some lenses on it. I've got these two little C-mount lenses. If anybody knows anything about C-mount lenses, let me know. But these are two little Fujinon 8mm and 15mm lenses. So I'm gonna give these a go. I've got some adapters coming for them. I'm gonna give them a go on that body and just see what it's like. I don't think I'll ever put the footage out on YouTube, but it's just for fun. See how we get on with them.